Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau. The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Advertech Printing, and IP Labs.
Hello again and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by Joe Hart, the president and CEO of the Dale Carnegie organization. Hi, Joe. How are you today?
Terrific, Gary. Good to see you.
So most people have heard the phrase Dale Carnegie or heard of Dale Carnegie Training or something, but most people don't understand it's probably the longest running personal improvement training program in existence. Can you talk a little bit about the history and why it's still applicable today?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible when you think about, today in the different companies that are in the space. To my knowledge, I think to our knowledge, Dale Carnegie was the very first. Our company was founded 111 years ago this year by Dale Carnegie. And I mean, he was an incredible innovator. He understood people. He understood, human relations. And he wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which has been a best-selling book for 87 years. So really almost even to your question about, relevance, you'd have to ask, gosh, what is it about a book, any book, that would make it a bestseller for 87 consecutive years? Why is it a bestseller today? And it's because Dale Carnegie really understood and outlined in How to Win Friends, how to build enduring relationships, how to connect with people, how to deal with difficult people, how do you build trust? I mean, a lot of the things that we think about in terms of just foundational, even in leadership or relationships and so forth, he outlined those things, and those things are truly applicable today. So today we have 200 operations as a company in 86 countries. We deliver training in 32 languages. We offer our Dale Carnegie course, which is the course that he had designed and innovated on, presentations, programs, leadership, sales, a whole range of things. And we work with large companies, small companies, individuals, really anyone who's looking to improve or enhance their performance.
One of the appealing things about the Dale Carnegie course is it's also very local in the sense there's local teachers in a community who are offering the course. It's not someone who is going to be, parachuting in to do a course in a Holiday Inn somewhere, something who's actually in the community.
No, that's exactly right. In fact, it's one of the huge competitive advantages I think we have. It's a global franchise network. So if you're in Lansing, Michigan, or if you're in New York, or if you're in wherever you are in the country or the world, you've got someone who knows the community, is active in the community, speaks the language, knows everything about what's happening, and really is able to connect and also to network and to connect people who take our programs to others in the community and that type of thing. So it's not like some of these people, other companies, you might say, oh, can you do training and such? Oh yeah, we'll send someone out there. Okay, that's fine, but it's an advantage to have someone who's local, who knows might know your company, build a relationship, that type of thing.
Amazing, a company that teaches building relationships, actually building relationships and how they work. It's crazy. So the Dale Carnegie program, like you said, has a lot of different facets to it. You can do the classic program, which I've been through. And then, of course, there's sales and certain other programs. But part of that is kind of the aura of that, I think, includes leadership. And that's something that your new book is about. Can you talk a little bit about leadership being so important in today's society?
Yeah, actually, leadership may be more important now than it ever has been. And part of the reason I say that is because everywhere we look, there's a crisis in leadership. You've got, whether it's, companies imploding or government officials who are untruthful or whatever it is, we've just got people who are in positions of leadership, and we say, are these people representing our values? Are they, standing for the things that we would want? Are they high integrity? Some people certainly amazing leaders, and at the same time, there's an opportunity for greater leadership. Dale Carnegie has been focused on leadership long before anyone else. And this is something that we really teach in our Dale Carnegie programs. It's also something that we thought was really important to focus on and build on in our, the new book that I co-authored with my friend and colleague, Michael Crom. It's called Take Command. And it's about taking command. How do you take command of your thoughts and your emotions, first of all. I mean, that's the first part of the leadership. I can't lead anybody if I can't lead myself. If
Right.
if I am stressed and worried and anxious and edgy, and I've got someone who reports to me or someone I'm working with, and I'm barking at them all the time, it's like, hold on a second, before you even try to lead someone else, how do you develop that inner strength so that you can become, a more effective person at managing, your emotions, being more courageous, being more resilient and self-confident, and not being insecure or whatnot. The second part, though, of this book is about taking command of your relationships. And if you're leading people, that's all about relationships. How do I connect to people? Do people trust me? Am I someone that they want to follow? Mm-hmm. Do I do the things that I say that I'm going to do? How do I deal with difficult people, whether I'm the difficult person or somebody else is? So, and then the third part, which is a huge part of leadership, is vision. Take command of your future. What's the vision you have for yourself? What are your values? What's your purpose? What's the impact you want to make? So in many ways, what we've tried to do is to build on Dale Carnegie's proven principles that are 100 years old. And we've brought in just dozens and dozens of stories from people all over the world who are experiencing success through following these principles. So the story is, it's the story really tells the principle.
You're right in the sense there is a crisis in leadership, it seems to be the same, especially in the business world, where there does seem to be a disconnect with people's personal character and their business character, right? And that is something that, the Dale Carnegie program kind of focuses on. If there's a disconnect there, your people are probably not likely going to follow you.
That's right. I mean, so often that disconnect can occur when we have blind spots, So I might, we often see ourselves in a certain way. We give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. We do something, we say, well, Gary understood why I did that, or he knows I'm a good guy or whatnot. But the way people judge us and evaluate us is based on what they see and what they hear and how we act and all these different things. How do you kind of bridge that gap? How do I identify my blind spots? What are the things that I'm doing as a leader or not doing as a leader that undermine my ability to connect with other people? So that's certainly one of the things. If you take a Dale Carnegie program, we really focus on helping people discover some of those things, on really bringing out their greatness so that they can connect with people. And that's also something we talk about pretty extensively in Take Command. Is
the book part of a course, or is it a standalone publication that kind of builds on the classic Dale Carnegie book?
Yeah, it's really more of the latter. Let me just give you, maybe Gary, would be helpful to even explain kind of where this came from, because this book was born for me out of suffering, if you will. And what I mean is, it was March of 2020. And at that time, our Dale Carnegie business, in January 2020, when the earliest signs of COVID were hitting around the world, our business was 95% in-person, face-to-face. So if you want to take a Dale Carnegie program, we might be coming to your company, or you might be going to a classroom, but in January 2020, I was watching our China operation start to go into lockdown, and then all of Asia, and then Europe. By the time March 2020 came, even though I had been very steeped in a lot of the principles of Dale Carnegie, I still found myself, just the humanity that we all have, finding myself stressed. I was waking up. I remember one morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, I was waking up every day at 3 o'clock in the morning, and just my thoughts were just going to the, all the worst possible places. And I picked up Dale Carnegie's book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Now, most people have heard of How to Win Friends, but How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, also phenomenal book. And in that book, I'm flipping through the pages, Gary, and I see this chapter where Dale Carnegie, someone asked him about the most valuable thing he'd ever learned. And he said, it's really about how you think. If I know how you think, I know how you are. I know your life. I know who you are. And he quotes Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, someone who said, our lives are what our thoughts make it. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, 3:15, I'm sitting like at a walk-in closet off of my bedroom, because I just didn't want to wake anyone up. And I start thinking about this, and all of a sudden my thoughts start to shift, and I start to think about opportunity and what do I need to do to lead more effectively. And that was a galvanizing moment for me. Mm-hmm. I worked with our franchise, and we're fortunate to have phenomenal franchisees all over the world, Dale Carnegie team members all over the world. And so we really flipped our entire business and frankly came out of COVID stronger, more agile, more competitive, both online, in person. Tremendous results from our online programs. So what we've been able to do is to go through that crisis and to come out, in much stronger. But that all starts with people, whether it was me or our team members who are facing change and dealing with fear of what was happening with COVID. So the invitation really was, and that's Michael and I were talking about all the struggles that people in the world were going through. And we said, you know what? How do we introduce Dale Carnegie's principles to people who maybe don't know them? Maybe it's a younger audience, with stories of younger people from all over the world who are applying these principles and seeing great results. So let's write this. Let's write Take Command. And that's really where it came from. At
that time, there was so much uncertainty in the world. And that's where I think people, kind of looking back, I think in some ways people have a short memory in the sense where they kind of forget the turmoil and the uncertainty that was in that time that did create a lot of negative mindsets at the time. Did you get any pushback from people who were kind of wed to the traditional Dale Carnegie platform? Because a lot of the value of the Dale Carnegie class is the in-class participation and the, fact you really have to go. To get your certificate, you got to go to every class. What was the response from people when you said, listen, we need to move some of this online? Was the idea that you're going to try and find a way to increase the interactivity to reach that level of Dale Carnegie expectation, or what was the thought process there?
Yeah, it's a great question because you're right. We forget kind of what was happening in those days. Here's the thing. Our programs, as you have experienced and as you said, are highly, highly interactive. So these are not lectures. You're going to sit in a classroom. These are about, about breakthroughs, individual breakthroughs. It's about interacting with other people. It's about developing self-confidence and communicating more effectively. So, for 107 years, that had been all pretty much face-to-face. Now, we did have a unit that was doing virtual instructor-led training online very, very well, but it was a very small part of our business. So in March 2020, and certainly in the United States, when we were talking to our franchisees, the first thought was, well, this COVID thing, hopefully it'll be gone and we'll shut our classrooms down for a couple of months and we'll be back up by June. And I remember thinking, based upon what we were having a global view, I don't think so. I didn't have any idea it was going to be as long as it was, but it certainly, so we need to retool. So it was a change management, even for people who are teaching change management, going through the change.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, it's like Dr. Heal Thyself, Right. So it was hard, but I credit, our franchise owners and our team members who said, let's give it a shot. And so the questions, one of the things we teach in Dale Carnegie is not to ask, can we do this? Mm-hmm. Can we do this implies, well, no, we can't. What you say is, in what ways can we, right? So in what ways can we take the most interactive, powerful, in-person, longest, enduring training program ever and bring this online in a way that is as engaging as it could possibly be? And they did that. Mm-hmm. So the scores that we were getting from a customer standpoint, the net promoter scores and voice of customer scores, were just about as high as they were in person. And in fact, many of our clients today are still doing a lot of online training. They're doing it online versus in person. In many cases, their workforces are remote. So it doesn't make sense to bring people back in person. In many cases, it's hybrid or whatnot. Or sometimes they'll have one division that's in person and one division. So we work with people around whatever they want. But that change management, all this, there's a great quote that I love and I think about often, which is that everything we want is on the other side of fear. Right? Everything you want is on the other side of fear, meaning that often I don't want to change. Often I'm afraid of what something means. But if I don't confront it, if I don't face it, I'm not going to be able to get to the other side of to get to those things that I want. So your listeners probably right now, there's probably people right now who are struggling with the change. There's probably something right now that they're afraid of. They say, should I take this chance or not? Should I seek this promotion? Should I, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And my encouragement, and that's why I think
Mm.
the goal for Take Command for this book, the goal for a Dale Carnegie course, took a Dale Carnegie course, one major goal is to give people the inner strength so they can make the tough decisions that are important to them. They can have the courage to face that challenge.
Mhm.
And, for me, the Dale Carnegie values and principles in the course that I took a long time ago, it's powered me through quite a bit.
Now, in the photographic industry, a lot of the fear and change comes from a technology standpoint, things happening externally to the industry, right? There was, for example, the transition from film to digital, right? That was, the traditional film industry didn't say, wow, this is great if our primary engine of our business went away in the course of about 7 or 8 years and we replace it with something where people don't necessarily have to print. Now today there's the AI piece is coming into imaging, and a lot of people are very concerned about that, right? What is going to happen to photography in general? So what's your advice to a business owner who has to take on this sort of external concern where something, maybe technology or business process or something has changed outside of their control, but they still have to run their business?
Yeah, so that's very real, and some of the technology changes, certainly in the photography space, are daunting. I'm sure as we look at this, and it's incredible what some of this AI is able to do. The thing I would say is, and the thing that powered me, kind of got me through those early stages of COVID, when that I talked about that night in March 2020. There's a saying, there's a principle in physics that every action is an opposite equal reaction.
Right.
So what that must mean then is, for every crisis, and we know that the opposite of crisis is often this opportunity. Where's the opportunity? So this is the chance then is, where is the opportunity for your business? Where is the opportunity for you personally? And it might be to really think in a way that you've never thought before. And this is something else, just again, going back to this taking command of your emotions and your thoughts. If you are stuck in this quagmire of just negativity and fear and emotion and depression or being down or whatever, I mean, it's hard to think creatively. It's hard to think constructively. It's hard to see opportunities that could be right in front of us. So, first, don't panic. Get excited about what might be possible and believe in the best. One last thing here I'll say, Gary, is that we've done a lot of global research as a Dale Carnegie. We've got, we do surveys all over the world and research and analytics. And one of the things that we've looked at is resilience. And people who are resilient tend to be confident and optimistic. And that doesn't mean that they've got rose-colored glasses or whatnot. They deny kind of the challenges, but they have a belief system that says, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to make something happen. And what that belief system does is it leads to better results than if we are just stuck in the fear. And gosh, can I do this? I don't know. Maybe you can. I can't do this. So if we've got to be able to challenge those thoughts so that we can unlock the ability to see opportunity where it exists.
Now, a business owner also has the double challenge of dealing with this fear and becoming resilient, and then communicating that to the people they work with. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's really something I think you talk about in the book a little bit, about, building relationships with not only your peers, but the people who work for you.
100%. So one thing that business owners and leaders may not always realize is the impact of their words, their emotions, their kind of presence on other people. If the business owner, if the leader is nervous, anxious, edgy, people see that. They respond to it. That can be contagious. On the other hand, the business owner, the leader, you got to get results. And you can do that and be encouraging. You can do that and be supportive. You can do that and say, look, Gary, we've got a real challenge here. I'm not going to kid you about it. What do you think we can do? What are your ideas about how we get there? What's one thing that we can do right now that would make a difference? So the opportunity for the leader is to bring out the best in the other people with whom they're working, and to help get results that maybe you couldn't get by yourself. So that first depends upon number one, I've got to be able to lead myself, and then I've got to be able to connect with and lead other people, and do it in a way that that brings out their best. Just one other point here, if I may. A person I admire, one of the greatest leaders, I think, living leaders, is a man named Alan Mulally. Mm-hmm. Alan was the former CEO of Ford. He was the CEO of Boeing. He's got to be a dear friend and a mentor to me. He has helped me learn a lot about leadership. Mm-hmm. And he came to Ford at a time when it looked like it was clearly going to go bankrupt, and he turned the whole thing around. And he did that, by this process of getting people to work together and focusing on the culture of the organization.
Right.
And saying, we're going to have values that respect each other, value each other, that are working together. We're going to create transparency. Mm-hmm. And so he changed the culture. And I was in India at one point talking about Alan Mulally and Dale Carnegie and leadership. And someone said, there are leaders who are very successful who can be very difficult. Why can't you do that instead? And my thought is, there are people, and Steve Jobs was an example that came up. So This guy was very difficult, but he was brilliant. So people were able to maybe endured certain things. But if you can get phenomenal results and bring out the best in people at the same time, why not do that? Mm-hmm. In fact, the opportunity for us as leaders to become better leaders when we can handle our own emotions and then work with other people effectively.
And one could argue in the case of that Tim Cook has actually exceeded Jobs's results by taking more of a supportive approach with his top people and his people. Because almost like, Tim Cook is probably considered the anti-Steve Jobs when it comes to managing a workforce. Now, what's interesting about that is, from what I understand in Tim Cook's place, he did not have a personnel background. He came up through supply chains and accounting and business numbers. So this approach will work on basically anyone's business background. It's not just the people, not just the sales people, not just the marketing people, but it's actually everywhere in the business can use these skills.
100%. Yeah. It's not like you'd say the people, the sales people, the marketing people who are, outgoing or whatever, have the stereotypes of people in those spaces. Any one of us, it really comes down to, so what are the values that we have as it relates to other people, and how consistent am I in living those values? And do people see that? Do I demonstrate integrity and trustworthiness? And we followed the Dale Carnegie principles in Dale Carnegie's Golden Book, which I know you have. Mm-hmm. But do I appreciate people? Do I respect people? Do I listen to people? Do I value people? Do I thank people? All those kinds of things that any person can do. You don't have to have a degree in friendliness, to do that. But by the way, I think it's important to say though too, you look at Tim Cook. Or you look at another person who has built a culture, Satya Nadella at Microsoft, same kind of thing. You can elevate people, you can bring the best out in them, and we also have to get results, right? So exactly. This is not just a kind of a empathetic, soft form of leadership. You look at Alan Mulally or Tim Cook or Satya Nadella. These are people who've gotten real results, but they've done it in a way that has empowered others instead of broken them down.
And especially in the tech sector these days, with the layoffs coming and things that are happening there, which again, it's difficult right now to manage a broad workforce like that. So managing conflict is actually one of the pieces of the book that you talk about. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the difficult people piece, but there are times when you're just not going to connect. What can you do in those times?
Well, the first thing is, I'd say, assume positive intent. A lot of times something happens, someone says something, someone does something, and our mind automatically goes to assuming that the person's intent isn't positive. Right. I've had plenty of times where I have made that assumption and it's been wrong, because there can be misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing I would always say is assume positive intent. The second thing is, and have a conversation. Sometimes people are afraid to have a conversation. I think you can have if you know how, you can have a conversation with anyone. You could say anything if you say it in the right way. I might come to you and say, Gary, I've been working together for X number of years. And I really appreciate so many of the great things that you're doing. I got to ask you a question about something. The other day you said this, or you sent this, or you did this. I interpreted it as this. How did you mean it? And is that what you intended? Or how could you help me understand? But you give the person a chance. Another thing is, so you assume positive intent and be willing to have the conversation. A third thing is to make sure you've got boundaries. Do you have boundaries? People will treat us often how we allow ourselves to be treated. And there's a great story in the book about Michael, who was working with someone who was just really, the person was a hothead. And at one point, Michael basically said, I want to have this conversation with you and I want to work with you. One of my boundaries is I will not be, spoken to, in a disrespectful way. And when you raise your voice, that means to me that's disrespect. So if we're going to have this conversation, I'm going to ask you to please not raise your voice. If you do, then this conversation is going to be over, And so having boundaries and communicating boundaries are another thing. And I think, the last part though, and it's always important to bring this up around the concept of difficult people. If there are toxic situations, there are people who violate our values. There are people who we should not be connected to at work or personally. And, if none of those other things are working, one of the solutions might be just to separate and to say, you know what, I can't work here, or I can't work with this person, or whatever, but certainly if we're in any type of an environment where there's any kind of emotional or other kind of abuse, it's like, maybe that it's just, I need to be out.
Well, the book is called Take Command, Find Your Inner Strength, Build Enduring Relationships, and Live the Life You Want. Where can people go to get more information about the book and the Dale Carnegie program?
Thanks for asking, Gary. DaleCarnegie.com is where you can get, we've got tons of information if people want to take a program, if they want to download a white paper, if they want to listen to, I've got a podcast, they could listen to the podcast. The book, TakeCommand.com, is where we've got some information about the book. It's available pretty much anywhere books are sold, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart, Books A Million. It's available in hardcover, in Audible, and also in Kindle electronically. Yeah, I hope people check it out, and I hope that they really has a huge impact in their lives. And I'd invite them. Please let me know. They can follow me or message me on LinkedIn or Twitter, which is at Joseph K. Hart.
Well, thank you, Joe. Great to see you again, and best wishes for continued success with the Dale Carnegie program and the book.
Thanks, Gary. You too.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.